Any other board members have a comment?
I have no problem with, I understand Steve's concern, but I really don't have a problem with doing it tonight.
John?
I go either way. You approve it tonight, or Mr. O'Leary wants his...
Go ahead and approve, that's fine.
Go ahead and approve it. That's fine. That's certainly
Do it either way.
All right, let's take a vote.
Need a motion first.
Need a motion.
Pointing to Steve, he's got the motion.
Oh, yes, Mr. Chairman, I move to grant a Class 1 license to Premium Power Corporation, 87 Concord Street, to expire December 31st, 2009, subject to all regulatory department requirements.
Second. Motion by Mr. Yule, second by Mr. Vino. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion passes 4-1. Thank you.
Thank you.
October town meeting articles. We have a list.
Mr. Chairman, if you'd allow me to just go through some of the revisions since your last meeting.
Yes. Go ahead.
You can start by deleting Article I, which is capital improvements for the Hillview Golf Course. Originally, a portion of this money, or a significant portion of this money, was $160,000, which was to be dedicated for the pavilion facility in Ipswich River Park. The Recreation Commission has decided to delay that action until a later date. What we do have is there is an unknown amount that the Hillview is possibly seeking for some fairway lawnmower equipment, and I believe that item is appropriate to be handled within the capital plan, so it does not need to be.
Do you know what the amount of the?
I do not. I do not. But that is certainly appropriate for the capital plan. Similarly, Articles M and N, both which deal with the Park and Recreation Department, the chairman of the Recreation Commission and I have spoken, and excuse me, Mrs. Mullen, and they would ask that those two articles be withdrawn for consideration at a later date. The Recreation Department is in the midst of, as you know, completing their field project and has a number of other ambitious initiatives that are underway right now. So those items will not be transferred to the capital improvement program. They will be deleted, and they will be brought back at a later date, perhaps as early as April of 2000.
And when will you get the amount of money for the golf course? Will we have that when we publish the warrant?
Yeah, I was hoping to have it. Yeah, we'll have it. It was just thumbing through the capital improvement requests that were here, and it identified $160,000 for golf course equipment and pavilion. Unfortunately, what's not broken down is how those dollars are distributed, and I don't have that. The remaining articles are identical to what you had seen in the past, but there are a couple of items that we did change, and I'd like to just go over those with you. First of all, Article O, which is an article that the board had suggested putting forward dealing with marijuana consumption and establishing a local bylaw that addresses non-criminal fines for use of marijuana products on public property, on public locations. The language that's been put forward here is a suggested warrant article. It would be a amendment of the town bylaws. We do not have a section number. We would look to the town clerk if the board decided to proceed with this article to fill in the proper chapter in the town code. And the remaining article is similar to what the police department had suggested going into the April town meeting. Or what we have done is establish a penalty amount. The maximum penalty amount is $300. That's what state law provides for. It's certainly, you can choose to go with a lesser amount if that's what the board decides. You do have some discretion. And then the enforcing authority is the police department. The article that was suggested back in April had the town administrator and the board of selectmen being involved in enforcement of the bylaw, I think it's appropriate that this article be enforced through the police department. So the definitions of public places have not changed. It refers back to General Law, Chapter 94C, Section 1, which is the definitions for illegal drugs. So that establishes that marijuana and tetrahydrocannabinol establishes what the definitions of those are. And so the article will still need to be reviewed by council if you decide you wish to go forward with it, so it's possible that there will be some revisions to it. But this is the proposed format for your consideration this evening.
When there's a private road, it says, well, upon any street, is any street considered to be, is a private road considered to be a street?
If it's accessible to the public, then it's an area where it would be covered under this bylaw. So a private street that's accessible to the public, that's utilized by the public, whether it's trash collection or other services that the town would provide, then in fact it would be covered under this.
So if it was a condo complex, right, it's a private road, that's considered a street because more than one family lives in the condo. I'm just trying to understand that.
Yeah, we can have that looked at by council. I'm not really in a position to respond to that question this evening. What we tried to do was include an all-inclusive definition of what we consider to be a public place. And certainly if you can think of any more, we would be happy to add them to it.
So the way, if I could, Bob?
Yeah, yes, I'm sorry, Joe.
Okay, so the way we have it now, Greg, is that this is only on public property, not private. So if somebody was in their own yard, they could not be charged with the bylaw. Am I reading that right?
Yes.
But they're still subject to the mass statute,
They're still
right?
subject to, yeah.
The intent of this was to be regulate public property, consumption on public property.
Right. We don't want to have a marijuana party at the
Town
the
common.
park.
We'll have a fest at the
But we
town
certainly
common.
don't want to condone it in the backyard either.
And certainly if there are
We don't
criminal
want to-
violations,
we don't want
this
to,
does not intend to supersede. And if there are any criminal violations or state laws,
Right.
those would obviously not be affected by any action the town is taking.
Frank, what about public view? If you can see somebody smoking,
Right.
doing drugs, if you can see them do them, is there a legal opening for public view? Because if someone is in their yard, you know, having a bong party of some sort, it's in our public view. And I know that there have been cases where, if I dare say, someone sitting in their backyard, unclothed, but being able to be seen by the neighbor, that was against the law for her to do that.
I don't have an answer for you, but what I am doing is jotting down these questions. When you decide to proceed with this, we'll forward those questions on to council and ask some clarification.
Thank you.
Has this article been reviewed by council at this point?
At this point, it has not.
Has not, okay.
And we're in a position to decide whether the board wishes to proceed in terms of being the sponsor.
Okay. And this has been basically requested by the police department. I understand that.
Police department originally proposed it, and in speaking with Chief Nolan recently, they had not planned on resubmitting it for October town meeting, which is why the board indicated a desire to
Right, that's right.
sponsor it on its own.
And did they say why? I don't recall, you probably answered it then, but I don't remember what the,
I really don't recall the
did they
specifics.
feel they can't enforce it, or?
I think there's questions about staffing levels and enforcement of the bylaw.
I don't want to hear the staffing level argument, unless, if we don't have enough staff, we don't have enough staff, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't have it on the books, you know.
I certainly would.
Enforcement is one thing, but,
Yeah, there's no question about it.
you know, so, I mean, the police department shouldn't be not recommending something because they don't think they're adequately staffed at this point.
Certainly, if the town were to adopt this, then the enforcement issue is statutorily required of being a member of the police department, and help there to enforce any state law.
I believe in concept, the entire board was in support of it. Correct?
Yeah.
So, fly it by town council then and get those couple of questions that were raised tonight answered. Next. Maybe we'll start at the top. Well, obviously, we don't need to deal with, do you know of anybody, any departments or, committees, wishing to, submit a report?
Not aware of anyone at this time, but typically that doesn't happen.
Till the last minute, right?
I had a note of one that I don't see on here, which is we were talking about creating a reserve account for the federal money that the schools are getting.
Yes,
That to be held for fiscal year 2011.
right. Good point.
Do we still need to?
Well, first, you know,
I
there
scribbled
is,
notes here, I was trying to decipher them.
there is in the last round of information that came out, a consideration undefined as to being allowed to carry the money over. Now, obviously, I don't know what that means, right? But I do know that, and it's a concern that I have, I do know that this money isn't gonna come in a lump sum. It's gonna come in payments, whether it's monthly or quarterly. My concern there would be if you decide not to take it all or ask the state to push it forward, I don't trust the state holding that money, because it's apt to evaporate at this point, based on what happened to the 2011 money, which was used to balance the 2009 state budget. So I'm thinking that we ought to have an article in there. Of course, it's up to the superintendent as to what he wants to do, and to assume we're gonna use all of that money and reserve, reduce from the school budget the appropriate amount and put it away. Now, I suppose we could do that in April too. We don't necessarily have to do it in October. I'm assuming the school
But
department
I
isn't
agree
gonna-
with you, Mr. Chairman, that I think we should establish some sort of mechanism to capture it. Is that the word?
Yeah,
Yeah, capture it and hold it.
because we don't want it to go into the
Right.
general fund and then, you know, and not be available for the schools.
But as
the
was
following
pointed
year.
out, the way that it's coming in, it's actually not going through our appropriating process
No, it isn't,
anyway.
no.
But I,
No, but this is a case of,
Right.
you know, in fact, the actual application wasn't available, you know, but it's gonna be one of these long drawn out of, things based on what I read. They're gonna have to justify, you know, meet these crazy requirements, and it'll be up to the superintendent and the business manager to find a way of making, and be able to allocate all of that money to provide the services that they wanna provide, without creating new services, right, which we can't afford to pay for the following year. Right now, the superintendent, at least in the budget that the school department is going forward with, is using about, I think it's $409,000 or $418,000 of the available ARRA funds, which, as a result of the budget, was reduced from $800 and something thousand to $775,000. His plan is to use 400 and something of that money. Save the balance for 2011. So the mechanism of how to do it, maybe we ought to have something in place, because maybe by then we'll know, right? And then if we don't need it, we pass it over, and we still have an opportunity to deal with it in April if we need to. So why don't we add it?
I've already made a note of that.
Find out, you know, I don't, whether it's some kind of a fund or whatever specifically for making sure that money's available for the schools the following year. Thank you, Steve. FY 2010 budget amendment, we'll be discussing that at our next meeting, is that?
Actually, I'd like to go through some of the detail with you this evening. One of the
Okay.
items for the town clerk was going to speak on earlier this evening is the fact that we have